Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for the autumn release. So I'm just going to cover some of the key enhancements from 8.52 through to 8.60. So for those of you who attended our Compucare live event, these slides may be very familiar, but I just wanted to record them for those who weren't able to attend so they can see some of these enhancements that we showed you on the day. So just kicking off with some of the little boring bits, so just some of the infrastructure changes and statutory reporting. So for those of you who host Compucare on premise, from 8.60, we now have minimum versions. So essentially the reason why we've done this is because we are going to be following Microsoft's end of life notices to ensure that everything's all as secure as possible. So it's just to make you aware that when you are loading 8.60, we now have these minimum versions. So for your server operating system and for your SQL server, you need to be on a minimum of 2016. We run 2019 internally, so obviously that's something that we would recommend that you have 2019. But you need to have at least 2016 as a minimum. One of the reasons why we mention this is because we do have clients who are actually running lower than 2016. So if you are looking to upgrade to 8.60 anytime soon, it's worth double checking with your IT just to make sure that you are up to those minimum levels. So just looking at some statutory reporting. So for those of you who do NHS returns will be fully aware that there was a new version for your CDS returns that came in from April. So this is now 6.3. But what we have done in Compucare, we have enabled Compucare to support IUVO, EMIS and System C for the data extracts. So if you aren't running 8.56 and you do CDS returns, it's probably worth making sure that you load 8.56 as a minimum, so you can just start testing those extracts, because again, obviously it's really important that if you're doing your NHS returns, you need to make sure that you're compliant with the latest CDS version. So similarly for Fin, so Fin also introduced new format. So theirs came in from May. So again, what we've done is we have amended the submissions for those of you who do Fin out of the system. So for your admitted patient care data set, so for all of your statistics around your admissions, procedures and all of that kind of stuff, that Fin then use on their website for patients to review the hospitals or the consultants when they need to come in for procedures. So we've amended that data set, and also for those never events that hopefully don't happen very often, but for things like wrong side surgery, infections, falls, that kind of stuff. Again, there's a new data set for that one, for your adverse events data. So for these, you need to be on 8.53 as a minimum. So again, if you are submitting FIM from within the system, you need to make sure that you're on 8.53 to make sure that you're compliant with those new data extracts. So enough of that, let's move on to some exciting new enhancements. So I just wanted to, while we're still on NHS, let's have a look at some of the RTT changes that we've had to make. So that's your referral to treatment times. So for those of you who do the NHS returns for this, it's really important to make sure that the clock stopped at the relevant time. So again, it's making sure that those reports that go to the ICBs, that the clock has been stopped at the correct point to make sure that your data quality is as good as it could do. So what we have done is we've introduced a new toggle in the system, which essentially means that once the clock has stopped, it's then not going to be updated with any future activity. So an example of where this sort of comes into practice is a patient has their first definitive treatment. and they attend that appointment. They then DNA their follow-up consultation or follow-up physio. Previously, what would have happened is Compucare would have mended the clock based on the fact that the patient had DNA'd their follow-up. However, this new toggle will allow Compucare to not update the clock based on that future DNA. So again, that data quality is as good as it is. And when you're doing your reporting, the clocks have been stopped at the relevant time, and making sure you get paid for obviously hitting those RTT deadlines as well. So looking at some of the waiting list changes. So previously, when you are looking at your waiting list entries, it was really, really difficult to find out how long the patient had actually been waiting. So it used to just show how long the patient had been waiting on the waiting list rather than how long they've been waiting since their referral. So we have just added some additional columns into the waiting list screen, so you can now see a lot more clearly as to how long the patient has been waiting. So then when you are looking through your waiting list and trying to prioritise which patients need to be booked first based on how long they've been waiting, again, that's going to be a little bit more clearer for you now. So we've also added that information onto the reading plane. So by default, this is actually switched off. So if you wanted to add that on, you just need to simply edit the reading plane layout. We are aware, obviously, it's now getting quite busy on there. So this might also be the opportunity to have a look at if there's any other fields that you don't need on there, and have a bit of a clear up while you're adding these extra, adding this extra information on. So looking at some integration in Compucare. So we currently actually do the eDischarge for inpatients out of the system. So this is obviously already available. So what we've done is we've added some additional enhancements to this. So essentially what we needed, so for patients that have come in and had their admitted procedure, we needed a way to distribute these summaries which wasn't over email or in the post. So what we have done is we have now integrated with Docman Connect. So as far as we're aware, 60% of GP practices across the UK are actually using Docman. So this is a really great way for you to be able to send your eDischarge summaries in a secure manner, which also means that you're compliant as well with your NHS returns. So what happens is if the GP practice is a Docman customer, the eDischarge will then be sent into the Docman mailbox for the GP to then be able to pick up the relevant documents for their patient. If the GP practice isn't a Docman customer, the documents are then simply sent over to the mesh mailbox for, again, the GP to then pick up the documents from the mesh mailbox as opposed to the Docman one. So this is something that is chargeable. So there is a small license fee as well as a slight amount of implementation. So if there's something that you're interested in, please get in touch with us and we'll be more than happy to sort of talk you through what's possible. So one of the other new integration pieces that we have added is a custom tile in the patient area of Compucare, which essentially means that a consultant can launch the Clinisys ordering portal from within Compucare to then request their blood tests. So the reason why we have introduced this is then consultants don't have to leave Compucare to load the portal, and also if you're doing any of your outsourcing of your laboratory tests to the NHS, which they tend to use the Clinisys portal, they have a very specific way of integrating, which doesn't usually use our HL7 messaging. So we have enabled this new custom tile to make sure that we can sort of cater for that fact. So for those of you who use the NHS for your laboratories rather than private providers like TDL, This could be something that you could make huge benefit for. So essentially what would happen is the consultant would launch the portal for within the patient area. That message would then bring across any the patient demographic information that's needed. If the patient's already in the system, it would then match it, or if not, it would then register the patient. The consultant can then request their blood tests, and they can also then see any results from previous blood tests as well. So we do also have the option where we can send information back from the Clinisys portal into Compucare using HL7. However, this is an additional one, and it depends whether the NHS trust that you're dealing with are happy for this to happen. But essentially what we can then do is we can then bring that laboratory test back into Compucare as an unsolicited order. And it would then record the test, the result, and then the associated charge that then comes along with that. So this is also something that is chargeable. Again, it has a small licensing fee and some additional implementation costs. So if it is something that you're interested with, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to talk you through it as well. So looking at some of the scheduling changes that have come in. So looking at the inpatient scheduler. So for those of you who have very large wards, currently it can be quite difficult to see lots of beds on one screen. So as you can see, I've only got a few on the screen at the moment. So for those of you who might have loads and loads and loads, you'd have to do lots of scrolling. So it's not the most user-friendly manner. So what we've done is we've introduced this new compact view, essentially. So what happens is we can reduce the height of the blocks, so you can fit more on the screen. So essentially it's just going to squash everything down, so you are only seeing the minimal information that you need to, rather than just saying lots and lots and lots. So this can go down to 25, which is currently I think is around 50. So again, we can see the difference of what's happened when I've amended the height. Again, I still don't have a lot on here. You can squeeze more on if you want to. But for those of you who, NHS in particular, I know quite a lot have really large wards. But again, any of the private providers might also have a similar issue. So hopefully this is going to make it a little bit easier for users when they're looking at the scheduler to see where there's gaps to add patients in, or maybe even move beds. Hopefully this is going to help from managing your ward side as well. So just looking at looking at patient letters. So currently, if you're emailing the letter out of the system, there was only the possibility to send the email from like a system defined email. So there was only one, and you can sort of change that. But what we have now done, so as you can see, it's only coming from one, and there wasn't an option really to change it to another email. So we have now added an additional function for users to be able to send letters via a location email. So this may be a scenario between outpatients have an email that they'd prefer all of the outpatient appointments to come from this particular email rather than just the system one. Or also radiology. So it may be that the radiology department have their own email, and they would prefer all of the radiology appointments to come out from that email. So if the patient has any queries, they can actually then email back to the radiology department. Alternatively, if you have multiple sites from within the system and you actually want the email address to come from your London hospital as opposed to your Manchester hospital, so we can now cater for that fact. So essentially where this information has been pulled from is the location against the room booking. So by adding this toggle, Compucare will then pull the email from the location of the room booking, so you can then make sure that it's a bit more granular based on your site requirements or even your department requirements as well. So that's just a new feature that's come in. So looking at correspondence, so previously it was quite difficult to get a bit of an audit record of what letters had been sent out to the patient when it comes to reprints. So it may be that the patient had their original appointment letter, they then needed it sent again, and then they also had it emailed to them. But previously it was really, really difficult to find that. You'd have to then trawl through the audit records to find out when it was sent, because it may be that the patient's saying that they didn't receive their appointment letter, or if you look at it from a debtor letter perspective, they may have said that they haven't actually received any of that. So what we have now done is we have now introduced a new drop down, which you can now see a bit of a record as to what letter was sent, how it was sent, and by who, and obviously the date that it was then sent. So for scenarios around like debtor letters, you could then see the full record of, on this date, this one was sent, and then a reprint was sent by email on this date, and then you can then get that record a lot easier. So for those correspondents that have had reprints, you'll then be able to see this little arrow. For those that haven't, you wouldn't see that. But again, hopefully that's just going to make it a little bit easier when you're having to sort of track back whether correspondence has been sent to the patient or not. Brilliant. Okay, so we're just going to look at some of the finance changes that have come in. So we have introduced a new security permission. So not crazy exciting, but for those of you who may have issues between info-only bill and billing, this hopefully may help that issue when you're deciding which users should have what permissions. So we may have scenarios where we have the receptionist may want to print an info-only bill for the patient to say this is how much your consultation for today is going to be, as well as your planned activity for your MRI and your blood test. So the patient then can see how much that appointment's then going to be for the services that they're having in the hospital for that day. It may also be from an inpatient stay perspective. They may want to see how much their bill's up to. So for their 3 night stay that they've been in, they want to see where the bill stands at. So again, the nurse on the ward may want to just print out an info-only bill for them to see. But in these scenarios, you probably don't want those users actually being able to bill the patient, but it's really helpful for them to be able to see the info-only bill and give that to the patient. So what we have done is we've introduced a new security permission to actually split that function out. So previously it would have been to be able to info-only bill, they have the full permission to bill as well. So we've now split that for outpatients and inpatients. So you can now say particular users can info-only bill, but they can't bill. So on the flip side, the potential scenarios where we have that patients have been billed by accident rather than actually just the info-only bill that they needed to. Hopefully this new security role will actually alleviate those issues. So essentially just making sure that your users have the correct security permissions based on what they need, rather than just a general they need to do this, but they can't do that, but we don't have an option. So we've just split that out for you. So again, hopefully that's just going to make that a little bit easier and give your users the ability to info-only bill, even if you just don't want them to do the whole billing. So looking at some on-stop charges. So there may be scenarios where the patient's been billed, but there's charges have been put on stop since that's happened. So this may be that the charges are from a charge collection, or they're automated charges from the contracts, or also they may have come across from a charges interface. And sometimes it's too late to find out that the charges have been put on stop, and it's then you're trying to then post the invoice, and then it's just too late by that point. So what we've done is we've introduced some warnings for the user. So when they're looking at the patient invoice, they can clearly see that this particular patient now has some charges that are on stop. And essentially what now is going to happen is that users now going to have to fix those charges before the invoice can then be posted. So again, we've just got some extra ones. So either on the reading pane or the warning pop-up to say that these charges are on stop and they need to be fixed before the invoice can be posted. So this is the same for provider as well. This obviously one's just looking at patients, but it's the same scenario for provider as well. So again, hopefully that's going to make it a little bit easier rather than having to issue credit notes and all those kind of things, which then obviously confuse downstream billing systems and that kind of thing. So again, we're just trying to help warn the user before it gets too far down the line. So looking at the provider payment rules. So obviously, again, this is something that's already in. However, there's a few scenarios that we've come across which make it very clunky and quite manual process. So we've tried to add some additional fields into the rule that hopefully are then going to alleviate some of the problems that we've had with it in the past. So just looking at some scenarios that this now may help you with is we may have a situation where you have a provider rule that junior consultants get 90%, however senior would get 100%. So previously you would have had to have calculated each percentage per provider payment rule rather than just setting it on a general level, which again obviously is really, really clunky and very manual and time consuming for all of the consultants that you may have. Again, when you do uplifts, it's then going to be very, very difficult to then have to manually go through each one and then do the uplift. On a different scenario that we have is you may have consultants who get a percentage of the fixed price package or the invoice. So there may be situations where you have like, say, prosthesis as a part of the fixed price package. That cost of that prosthesis might then double. Previously, you would have had to have manually go through and change the pricing rather than doing it at a higher level. So what we've done is we've just added these additional fields that you can sort of see on screen. So we have the option to do percentages now rather than just individual values. And again, you can do that for multiple providers, for billing groups and particular items. We can also now set the a percentage based on the invoice rather than just the unit line as well. So again, hopefully this is going to be a lot less time consuming when you're then trying to do your uplifts or changing any provider payment rules within your contract. So yeah, hopefully that's going to be quite a big benefit, especially when it comes around to that time of year. So there may be particular scenarios where you have to override a provider charge. So hopefully this doesn't happen very often, but every now and again you may get a scenario where you have to write off a particular charge or a bill for a patient for whichever reason, and there may be a provider element to that. So it might be that you've had a discussion with the consultant and they've agreed to take £50 as opposed to the 100 that they would normally do. There wasn't previously an easy way to do this. So we've now introduced a new toggle, which means that you can override the provider charge just for that charge rather than having to sort of credit it and pull it back through. And then it gets really, really complicated by that point. So we just try to make that a little bit easier for those. Hopefully it doesn't happen very often, like I said, but for those situations where you do have to override it, similar to pretty much everything in finance, it is a security permission. So you will have to switch that on. But again, you wouldn't want everyone having that option. So if this is something that you would do, you'd probably need to switch that on. So looking at some of the efficiencies and automation changes that we've added to the system. So some of these have been sort of introduced previously in some of the other webinars that we've done, but I just wanted to just give a quick overview of some of the changes and also some of the examples of how it actually can work in practice. So we have introduced what we would call automated rules, but essentially what we're trying to do with these is we're trying to reduce the vast array of configurations that a bookings user may have to remember for various different functions in Compucare. So what we're trying to do is take that information out of the booking clerk's heads and then put it in Compucare, and then Compucare can then do the hard work for you. So we have different options based on different trigger events in Compucare as to what you want to happen next. So just running through some of the examples that we have. So upon making a booking, what do I want Compucare to do? So I may want Compucare to print a particular letter based on this consultant, or I may want them to create a particular form that's then sent up to the patient portal. Another example is referrals that have come through onto my waiting list. So based on this configuration, I want Compucare to show this part of next free, so I can then search for my relevant appointment rather than having to click through multiple areas to find that. It's going to display that to me a lot quicker. So when you've registered a patient, what do you want to happen? So it may be that when you register a new patient into the system, you want them to receive a notification to sign up to the patient portal. Again, similar with the payment. So you've taken a payment in Compucare. What do you want to happen? Do you want the patient to receive an SMS or an email to say, thank you for your payment, here's your receipt? So you don't then have to manually do that after Compucare is going to do it for you. So just looking at some of the examples. So looking at one regarding our waiting lists and referrals. So I have an automated rule for this to say, based on a cardiology referral, I want the patient to receive booking an appointment with the consultant, then they need to go off to have a treadmill test, and then they need to come back and see the consultant after. So that's 3 bookings that I want based on this referral type that's coming through. So what I've done is I've selected all the information that I need to. And then this configuration that's highlighted down at the bottom is essentially what I've created in next free multi-booking. So by this automated rule, Compucare knows that this is the configuration that I need for this particular first booking that's coming through. So if I show you what happens, so we now have this lightning bolt that pops up at the top. So you can see based on this type of referral, this lightning bolt's available. If you don't have an automated rule against that particular referral, you just won't see that lightning bolt. But obviously you can still go through the booking like you would normally. But for this scenario, we've got the lightning bolt available, and it's now saying, okay, I've got an automated rule that's against this referral. I can select that cardiology referral, and then it's going to launch the next free screen with the 3 bookings that I need to make. And then I can obviously go through and I can make that booking from there. So obviously, again, like I said, if you don't have the automated rule, or you can still go through the top screens to then add those bookings manually, but this is hopefully just adding that extra efficiency when you're trying to remember what type of bookings are needed for that type of referral. So Compucare is doing the hard work for you. So just looking at another example for these automated rules is an inpatient satisfaction survey. So I've had the patient that's come in, they've come in for their inpatient stay, and what I want Compucare to do is, upon their discharge, I want Compucare to create an inpatient satisfaction survey to be sent up to the patient portal for them to complete in their own time. And then what the patient would then get is the notification to say that they've got this inpatient satisfaction survey ready for them to complete, and then they can go onto the portal and then they can complete that survey for them. But again, from here, Compucare is doing the hard work for you. So Compucare knows in the background, when you press discharge, this then what needs to happen next, rather than your bookings team having to remember, oh, I need to send out that survey now. So again, hopefully there's lots and lots of different things that you can do with some of these automated rules. There's lots of stuff on the knowledge base if it's something that you haven't come across before. But it's definitely, if you have lots of different criterias, it might be worth just having a look at some of those and see if these automated rules can help you. So while we're still on automation, so we have added some additional function to debtor letters, again, to hopefully automate some of this process. So for those of you obviously who are using the debtor letter schemes, you set them up, and based on which stage the patient needs to receive this letter or this letter. And previously what would happen is that a user would then go into the screen, select the patients that need to have letter 1, for instance, print them all off, either they posted or emailed or whichever their preference is. And then they would obviously then have to go off. So what we have now introduced is we've now introduced a new toggle, which essentially is going to automate that for you. So you can say, based on at 10 o'clock, I want the Compucare to run through and find out which debtor letters need to be sent to which patients, and then Compucare then does all that for you. So I have a patient that's then been received their debtor letter via email, so they can then go and have a look and say, okay, well, I owe this much. I can ring the hospital and then I can make that payment. You do have the option for SMS for this as well, so it's not just email. What we kind of see with the SMS is that it directs the patient to the patient portal, so they can then pay for their outstanding balance on the portal, as opposed to ringing the hospital. But it works really, really well with email, and again, it frees up your users' time to do what they do best, rather than having to sort of manually go and print these and send them all out. And obviously as well, it saves on postage for those that are having to print them. So one of the extra things that we have introduced, so obviously we've had SMS in the system for a long time, so appointment confirmations and reminders. I think quite a lot of you do use it already anyway, but we do have the ability to send SMS messages out after outpatient appointments or inpatient discharge. So if there's anything in particular that you need to send to your patients after either their outpatient booking or discharge, you can set all these up in the system as well for you. But one of the things that we have seen customers using recently is embedding links into the system. For this particular scenario is the review links. So Doctify is one of the ones that we've seen a few customers using this really, really well. So it's just something that I wanted to mention for those of you who aren't familiar, that you can do this kind of thing. There is quite a lot of information on the knowledge base as to how you can use Doctify review links in the system. So obviously it's worth having a look at those if it's something that you think is a benefit to you. But again, you've got obviously the function to be able to use this for various other things that you need. It doesn't have to be just for Doctify, but you at least have that option that you can send out additional information after the patient has had their outpatient appointment or inpatient discharge. And obviously Doctify is a really good one for hospitals to use if you're wanting to gather those reviews as well. So that's everything that I wanted to show you today. So thank you very, very much for your time, and I hope that you found it beneficial. If there's anything that you would like any more information on, or you have any questions, please get in touch with us. There's obviously lots and lots of stuff on our knowledge base for these enhancements. And again, through the release notes, you'll be able to see some of those as well with some little videos. But again, obviously, any questions, please get in touch. But thank you again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you all soon.